son of a bitch.
Hey.
So we were in the middle, though. We're talking about, and what year? I'm thinking this is still before you actually started working for Anchor Bay. We're talking about 99, 2000 era.
Mm-hmm. I started working there in July of 2000.
Okay, so it's perfect timing.
Yeah.
Your nap didn't affect it that much. So the what I was talking about though is it seems like Anchor Bay from 2000 on, maybe 2003, 2004 was just like, it seemed like every week there was just a large amount of shit that I wanted to get. And like they were just starting kind of with the Dario Argento collection and the original the original DVD of Martin, which ended up being like kind of a collector's item there for a while too. There were a few that were like that.
Oh yeah.
And that one still hasn't come out on Blu-ray, has it?
No, Martin has had, a couple DVD releases, but no Blu-ray, although Second Sight will be doing that for next year finally. So.
Oh, God, that's good.
Yeah, that's a very underrated Romero movie. Nobody ever talks about that, even still to this day.
No, it's one of the ones that deserves more attention, for sure.
Here's what I want to know, though, about Anchor Bay. Like, where the hell do these people come from? Because like this company was like way ahead of its time in terms of releasing cult movies, and especially on DVD, which wasn't really even a thing at that time.
No. Well, there's a lot of factors that came into it because the company was sort of born out of the ashes of a couple of low rent EP kind of like rack jobber kind of companies like Star Maker, Home Video, and Video Treasures. And the company, as far as I'm concerned, if you really need to point to why Anchor Bay was Anchor Bay, it's because of one gentleman whose name was Jay Douglas.
And was he kind of like the financial backer or just the brains behind it? Or what?
No, Jay was an employee. Jay had a long history in sales and in the record industry, and he was towards, and he became a part of sort of his vision that directed the release of several of those, like the letterbox versions of those movies on VHS early on, the types of movies that were coming on. He would make handshake deals to, release a lot of great cult titles like, The Evil Dead and titles like that. I mean, he was the one who really had the vision to turn what could have just been another video company releasing a bunch of stuff into a label. And it was, I can't imagine, if he wasn't around, that company never would have done what it did. It was just, he saw an opportunity to do something with a label that the parent company, which was called the Handelman Company at the time, for several years it was the Handelman Company, which was another Michigan company. They were the company that would supply CDs into Walmart and stuff like that. They were sort of a mid-range, sort of a middleman distributor between the entertainment. They would always look at Anchor Bay and their success and go, we don't get these weirdos, but we're very happy to cash the checks. Mm-hmm. And so they tended to leave us alone for the most part. I mean, there was always some sort of, make sure the budgets are in on time and what are you doing with this and that, so forth. But at the end of the day, it was always just sort of like, we don't know exactly what they're up to over there, but every year they make more and more money, so let's not look into it too much. And Jay enjoyed that. Jay enjoyed that kind of environment when he could. I mean, Jay needed someone to rebel against, so he always had a problem with the corporate suits. They don't want me to do this and stuff like that. And those guys, and they don't have any soul over there, and it's just a machine. And he was a hippie, man. He was a grown up hippie, and but it was his overriding vision for the company is what made it what it was. And the reason that I went there was because of what he wanted to do. I saw it from the sidelines, and I was just like, I want a piece of whatever it is these guys are doing over there. because it was so cool and so unique, and no one else was doing anything quite like that. And so if you have to point to any one person who was really the reason that the company was what it was him.
So was he, because it looks like around like cult films, but was that him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was happening before then too. I mean, the company, you know, I first became aware of the company when I was working at a video distributor, and I started seeing these tapes coming in, like this gatefold release of Maniac and Spider Baby and all these films. Like, what the hell's going on? What is this company, Anchor Bay Entertainment? Because it was coming in the same category as the stuff that used to be Star Maker and Video Treasures. I'm like, what the hell is this? And so Jay was there before and all that, doing all that, even in the early days. And then Anchor Bay was actually one of the first companies to put out DVDs. They were, you know, certainly one of the, I think, the first independent company to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, he was always just the one saying, if it's cool, let's try this. And yeah, and he gravitated certainly towards the horror and the cult titles, because that's where the weird movies were, you know, and that's where the oddball ones and the movies that were left out. He had a predilection for the horror films, definitely for cult comedies, for sort of late 60s, early 70s cult films, race car dramas, stuff like that. I mean, he had a real affinity for it. He had such great instincts in terms of what the collector's mentality was. And, you know, the tin editions that we did and all the weird packaging and stuff like that, can't get anywhere else. And, you know, that's why I think Anchor Bay, for those years that certainly for the years I was there, we just put out so many cool things that no one saw coming.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that too, because we were just talking, like, at that time, you know, early 2000s probably, the only place you could get anything like that, like, would be through catalogs and things like that for us. But and I was talking about how it was exciting when you saw even like the covers of these movies, because we would have never seen anything like that if it hadn't been for like a distributor like that. So was it as exciting to work in that? Like, what was that like at that time?
You know, the thing is, in retrospect, yes, it absolutely was. At the time, you know, when you're at a job like that and you're in the office doing work and answering emails and stuff, a lot of it's just like any other job. You know, you're doing marketing meetings and, you know, putting together proposals and making phone calls and answering emails and stuff like that. But then you would, you know, every day there'd be something like, hey, we just acquired this movie. Have you ever heard of it? And it's like, what? Oh, my God. Or we get a packaging sample or an idea, or we'd see routings for covers. And, you know, we'd hear, it's like, oh, we're going to do this movie. Oh, they got this guy to participate. So it had all the trappings on the surface of being sort of a regular 9-to-5 office job. But then that was a title we pursued for almost 2 years before we finally got to get it, because the company that owned it didn't realize they owned it. And then we got to try this new packaging out and then like the Book of the Dead, that was almost a year-long process. So there's a lot of drudgery involved, but the end result was something incredibly special. And so you still, it was again, there's a lot of the trappings of what quote unquote a normal job was, but you were dealing with stuff that was just immeasurably cool. And it felt like, certainly for me at the time, it felt like I was really contributing to something important. And that tends to override any kind of day-to-day kind of monotony that will come up. But that, in retrospect, with that company, I was happy to go to work every single day. You know, there was never, I can't remember a single day where I ever got up and went, oh God, I really hate this place. Never happened. Towards the end, the company was changing a little bit, and so I was kind of like, I'm not sure what my place is here anymore, but you know, at the end of the day, that just kind of happens. But for especially for the first 3 years, almost 3.5 years I was there, it was a very, very special time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about. It seemed like during the early years, a lot of this stuff was kind of experimental in a way, because like you said, Anchor Bay was one of the very first companies to make DVDs. I was looking on here, I never knew that they were coming out with them like a month after the format debuted.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they did. I think I want to say Halloween and Dawn of the Dead were two of the first ones they put out.
Right.
And they were not. In retrospect, they were terrible releases quality-wise. But no one knew how to. No one knew how to encode DVDs back then, really. It's hard for people to believe that. But there was actually a period where it was like, what do we do with this so-called DVD?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the thing with it too is like we were only used to VHS really at the time, so I mean, you didn't really have anything to really put it next to. I guess you could like digital TV, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Jay had a hand in the Laserdisc, and that he got some titles that Anchor Bay was doing licensed over to Elite Entertainment, where Don May was at the time. So, Jay was, even back before DVD, finding a way to kind of support the collector's market in a different way. But then when DVD came up, they were like, okay, well, I think we can take the shot of this on our own. And, it was a little rocky at the beginning, but it was a little rocky for everybody. And but then once they found their groove, it was just like, oh, yeah, we were pumping them out. There was one point there where we were pumping them out on DVD and VHS equally. And then very quickly, DVD overtook VHS. And by how quickly that happened.
So bizarre though that happened the way that it did.
It did, yeah.
I kind of equate this too, because you were talking about Don May being at Elite, and then you and him were at Anchor Bay. It's like, I know this sounds kind of odd, but the beginning of like Nintendo, where you had all these guys that were kind of working for the same companies, but it was like a very small niche of people. Yeah,
it was. It was a very small pond, at the end of the day. And what's weird is because a few years before, this was like 95, 96, I think, somewhere in there, there was a signing with George Romero that was held at the Monroeville Mall that was in celebration and promotion of a 2-tape set that Anchor Bay had brought out of Dawn of the Dead back then. It had like a gatefold cover on it, and it had 2 tapes in it. And you could buy it there at the mall, and then George would sign it, or he would sign whatever else you had. And at that signing that day, Jay Douglas was there, Don May was there, his partner was there, and 3 other friends who would later go on to work in the video industry, who I would later know, were all there. And I never met any of them that day. They were
yeah, exactly.
They were all there, and it was like, oh man! Looking back, it's like, how the hell did that happen? So it's like, it's interesting how this small circle of people kind of gravitated just naturally, just because it was like, gravity just kept drawing us all together over the years before we even knew who the hell each other were.
Yeah, it's amazing in a way that group of people would kind of release almost everything that came out like cult-wise on any kind of format around that time.
Yeah, it was. And keep in mind, this is back. The internet was in what could best be described as its prehistoric era.
Yeah.
So some people had email addresses, and it was like there were very rudimentary websites and like forums and bulletin boards locally you could go into. I mean, so this wasn't. Yeah, AOL dial-up and all that shit. So this was like extremely early on, because when I got brought into the company, it was to do their website, because prior to me going up there, they didn't have a website. It never occurred to them that they needed one. And that's how back, it's hard for people to imagine back then that a company could ever think like that. But the internet was still the wild, wild west back then. So I came up there at right around a time where they started utilizing the internet to really communicate better with the fans and to start getting the word out about the releases. And that's when the whole kind of business dynamic began to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I said, during that classic time period, to me, I guess 99, 2000, all the way to like the pinnacle. The way I look at it is the Dawn of the Dead box set when it came out in like, what was the end of 2004 or something like that?
It was 2004. That was one of the last big things I worked on there. Not that is in any way connected to what you may consider the heyday. I left the company in April of 2005 because the position I had in the company was always kind of a weird one. I had a lot of different responsibilities that normally would have been assigned to certain departments within a corporate structure. was in charge of the release schedule, the website. I went and made public appearances for the company. I did, such and such, and happened acquisitions and marketing. Little by little, as the company was bought by another corporation, stepped in, bought the company from Handelman. Those responsibilities started getting reassigned to the departments they normally would have been in, which left me with very little to do for like the last 8 or 9 months that I was there. And then one day they just called me into the office and said, Michael, your position's just been kind of phased out. And it was sad, but at the same time, I was like, I get it. But the company went on to do a lot of great stuff after that. I just happened to be there during a really great period of time. And I think I made my mark in terms of my contributions, but it was an amazing team of people up there that existed before me, during me, and long after me too. So, but the company changed. It became less about the catalog titles and about newer stuff that was coming up. The company, because IDT wanted to focus that way, and then later on when Starz took it over, it became more about newer titles like The Walking Dead and things like that, and much less about catalog titles.
Yeah, and the sad thing, like we'll talk about, I mean, we're going to definitely go through a few titles here, but like the Anchor Bay just kind of slowly died. Like that's the sad thing. Like it just. Well,
it was look, it's easy for me to make a comment on what happened to the company from the sidelines, and I still knew people. I had very, very close friends that worked with the company right up until the day that they folded up. Because eventually Lionsgate bought Starz, and then Lionsgate had its own home entertainment division. They didn't need that, and that's what Anchor Bay essentially was for Starz. So, that was the end of Anchor Bay. But even before then, I always felt, from my perspective, that Anchor Bay sort of forgot its audience. That the audience had been built upon these cult titles and this rich history, and they had built a label by exposing people to new films that maybe, or even older films they hadn't even heard of. I can't tell you how many people I heard about were buying an Anchor Bay title just because they saw the boat on the spine and went, I have so many titles from this company. I've never heard of this, but I'll take a chance on it. And I think that got lost somewhere along the way. I mean, you can only release catalog titles forever. For a certain period of time, and there's going to be a point where you need to start supplementing it with new stuff, and you can only release Army of Darkness 500 times instead of 501. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I just felt like there was an opportunity to really build a label that was built upon the history of the titles that we brought out, and that just something got lost in the translation. I don't know, but every company that owned Anchor Bay had a different vision for it. And so, it's easy for me to sit back and say, that's not what I would have done, but I didn't own the company. So, and again, a lot of really great people worked in, and a lot of terrific releases came out after I was there. It wasn't like, I don't want to make it sound like I stopped working there and the place went to shit. That was not at all what happened. It was just,
Here's the really weird thing about that, right? Like, I'm looking on here, and something happens in 2005. I don't know what it is, but like what you were saying, like in 2005, it seems like they veered away from the format of like horror and cult titles. But then in like 2006 and 7, it kind of comes back. So I don't know if they did that for a year. We're like, holy shit, like this is not working, or I'm not sure what the shift was there. But
no, I think it was. I don't think there was ever. It's easy to look back at some of that stuff and go, well, there must have been a decision made here at this point to not do this and go on for. It really wasn't like that. I think a lot of it was just that they knew they didn't want to keep reissuing some of these catalog titles, and they wanted newer titles, but there might have been a dip there where the stuff that they were wanting to work on just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, that's
and true. It's just if the company survived, they had a game plan, but so much of it was very flexible. Because it would depend on, wow, this title we didn't have much faith in suddenly connected. Well, what can we do that's more like that? And this. And also another thing that's very important to remember about Anchor Bay was, as successful as horror was, they had enormous success, which almost bankrolled a lot of the smaller horror titles. They had a huge children's line, which was with Thomas the Tank Engine primarily. For years. I mean, that was a huge moneymaker, and they were one of the industry leaders in fitness titles. That was another huge, huge moneymaker for them. So it wasn't just horror and cult titles. Anchor Bay was an incredibly diverse video label that catered to all markets. So that was a situation where, on the surface, like, well, they were a cult horror title. Yeah, well, if you were a horror collector, of course you were. That doesn't necessarily mean you bought Crunch Fitness or that you were a Thomas the Tank Engine. But I've had people tell me, say, oh, I loved Anchor Bay. And I was like, yeah, me too. Yeah, Thomas the Tank Engine. I'm like, oh, that's right. Your perspective on the company is going to depend on what kind of a buyer you were, or what age you were, or what you were into. So, Anchor Bay was always more than just horror and cult titles, but it was always a fascinating, almost schizophrenic company at times, and I think that was one of the things that eventually kind of got lost a little bit. It got a little homogenized on some level, which I think was inevitable. Because when you get owned by another corporation that has a vision, then it becomes a part of another big entertainment conglomerate. Eventually the product line is going to change, and you have to grow and you have to evolve. It just, from my perspective, it evolved into a direction that wasn't as interesting. But again, that's just me talking. But and again, me from the sidelines looking at going what it was compared to what it ended up being. But that didn't mean they didn't do a lot of great work, which they really did. Some of those Walking Dead releases were amazing.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like you said, if that was what you were kind of predisposed to, then they would be all in that realm.
Yeah, right? And then there were some people that were loved what Anchor Bay eventually became and what some of the titles they were doing. So I guess it's really all just a matter of perspective. And I don't sit here and think that I think everybody wanted the company to succeed the best they knew how, and they tried and. But yeah, there was a disconnect with Anchor Bay at the end from where its past was, I felt. And I don't think there was a deliberate attempt to, I'll just say, well, fuck it, we're done with that. I don't think there was that at all. And there were a lot of still cult titles that they would do. They still did Halloween, Evil Dead, they did Silent Night, Deadly Night. They still had their toe dipped into that, but it just wasn't quite the same. But, again, it can't stay the same forever, I suppose.
No, but here's another part of it too, though. Do you think that without Anchor Bay that we would have or would have had now, I guess with all this going on, the convention scene that came about?
I think that it's funny. Those things. My first horror convention was in 1994 in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina area, and I'd never heard of such a thing. I was just like, I didn't know people. It was like opening up. There's like the doors. It's like when Dorothy steps out of the black and white in the Black Wizard of Oz and opens up and there's Oz in color. That's like me, and that was me like entering my first horror convention. It's like I had no idea such things could be true, but then there did seem to be at the time that Anchor Bay really began to explode. Horror conventions became a really big thing in the early 2000s. A lot. I don't think Anchor Bay drove that necessarily, but it certainly was part of the circle of life of that sort of thing, because we were bringing out the movies that were exciting the fans that wanted to go meet the people who made those movies, and so it kind of, we were part of the food chain there.
Yeah, I think kind of like, here's the way that I think it kind of helped anyway, is that if it hadn't been for a company like that, like people in our area would have never gotten to see those movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree.
It kind of drove that out into like the I don't know what you call this area, like rural kind of area to get people like that to notice and then want to go to conventions. And
that was we exposed a lot of people to titles that they would not have been able to see otherwise. And one of the reasons for that was because we were owned by a music distributor that had ins to Walmart, Kmart, and all these stores. We were able to get a lot of our titles into areas that some of the other distributors or companies never would have been able to do so, or would have been able to convince those companies to carry. I mean, being able to see Evil Dead and Dawn of the Dead on the shelves of Kmart was a very surreal thing back then, because it was just like, what, really? And it ended up being something where Anchor Bay just had an in and found a way to get their titles out everywhere, not just like the big cities, but like to everywhere all across the country. And then they had Anchor Bay UK, they had Anchor Bay Canada. I mean, they were incredibly effective in finding their audience wherever they were.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, do you think, looking back now at all of the genre companies, do you think any of these companies would be, I'm sure there would be genre companies of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
Anchor Bay kind of led the way. Do you think that it would be like the limited edition thing kind of started with Anchor Bay?
Yeah. And Anchor Bay was definitely a trailblazer in many regards. And I think certainly the approach you see in companies like Screen Factory and so forth are very much modeled on what Anchor Bay kind of first threw down back in the day. But we would still have companies like, Synapse Films would still exist because Don May was around before. Bill Lustig, who was actually a big part of Anchor Bay for many number of years, he would have still been out there bringing out a lot of these titles, and Blue Underground certainly would have still existed. But Blue Underground, he learned a lot of lessons, when he doing Blue Underground, that he learned at Anchor Bay, because Bill was our production manager for Anchor Bay for several years. Yeah. And so, a lot of, like I said, just a lot of people contributed to what that company's approach was. But him, and it's, like I mentioned, Jay Douglas, they just found a way to make you want this thing, even if you had never necessarily heard of this movie or whatever, but it made you want to go, what is that? That looks really cool. And that was that's certainly a mantra a lot of cult video companies and smaller labels and niche distributors have adopted since then. I see a lot of Anchor Bay's DNA kind of spread out in a lot of these other companies, and I think that's just a natural thing. And it just reminds me that, God damn, this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I moved to Michigan in July of 2000. That's just a little over 20 years ago. I moved up here to take that job. And at times it seems like I just got here, and then other times it's like, no, it feels like 20 years. No, it definitely.
We had a lot of people, like I'd posted a thread on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
Just Anchor Bay memories or some of your favorite releases and stuff. Mm-hmm. And there was one that Tim Goodall posted on here. And it really took me back a little bit too, because Best Buy is not this way right now. He says he loved to go and be able to find all those titles in Best Buy.
Oh, yeah. We would go, I'm trying to interrupt, but we would do that too. Like we had major releases that come out. A lot of us would go Tuesday and just stay there and go to Best Buy and wander around the aisles and watch and see if people bought our titles.
Right.
Like, I remember when Near Dark, I'll never forget Near Dark Day when that streeted. It was me and my friend Mike Ortiz, who was who later become the head of graphics at the Anchor Bay, but at that time was one of the lead designers and had designed Near Dark, and that had been a real imaginative, fun process for the both of us, just getting that whole thing done. And we're looking at the aisles, and we're just saying, "Oh my God, he's picked it up! Oh, he's buying it!" And we watched several copies go out the door that morning, and that was really fun. It was just like, it's like it's like our baby's been born. Here, have a cigar, everybody. So that was. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your point, but it brought that up.
No, you're fine. I mean, really, the horror section in Best Buy in like 2002 or 2003 is the entire movie section now at Best Buy.
Yeah, things. I mean, no people buying DVDs in stores physically. Who does that anymore? It's that whole industry has shifted so dramatically. It's not even. It's a faint echo of what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. I am curious, because I don't want to go through every one of these titles, Slippy, because there's no way. Like, even if we just went with the mainstream horror titles, it would take till freaking 5 o'clock in the morning. But
we did do quite a few of those, yes. I mean, there
just out of curiosity for a couple of them that I have no idea. Like, I would have had no idea about previous to Anchor Bay released them. Like, how does the Argento collection and the Fulci collection come about?
I think that was a natural evolution of the fact that we were getting attention for a lot of the cult titles, and that's where I think Bill Lustig certainly was helpful, because he had contacts to figure out a way to contact the licensors overseas for a lot of these titles. And at that time, the idea of doing collector's editions of Euro horror titles was, no one was like, what the fuck, huh? I mean, it was just, it was just like that. No one can consider, you want to do what now? So that's kind of how that, and then once that ball started rolling, it was just like, well, what other Euro horror title can we get? I mean, it was an amazing amount of Euro horror that came out in the 4.5, 5 years I was there, And it was just and some of those times, here's another thing that needs to be said. You know, because of the Anchor Bay and the way we publicized these titles and the way people kind of talked about them, there was a sort of a myth that every single thing we brought out was a huge seller. It was not. A lot of the titles did okay, and some kind of outright tanked because, you know, there was a very limited audience for them. But they did still find the people that they were going for, but it was just a matter of not every single thing that came out, you know, sold hundreds of thousands of copies. But fortunately, we had Evil Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Halloween, Army of Darkness to kind of make up for the fact that maybe A Blade in the Dark didn't set the world on fire when it first came out, you know. But that was okay, and that was okay. And then from Jay's perspective, it was just like it all evens out in the wash anyway. And we still get to bring out these really cool titles. So not every title had to perform like Evil Dead. Because we had A titles, B titles, and C titles, and so it was a matter of let's sell this much or this much or this much. And if it couldn't even sell like the base of a C title, chances are we weren't going to do it anyway. But you know, it was always interesting to see, especially with the Euro horror titles, which ones really sold. And usually, if we had Fulci or Argento's name on it, it was almost a guarantee. Like Zombie was one of the biggest things we ever brought out cumulatively, was Zombie. And then, of course, Suspiria and Opera. Although Suspiria and Opera have a little bit of notoriety because both those titles came out on the same day, and that day was September 11th, 2001.
Jesus,
that was our street date for Suspiria and Opera, which was just like. Oh, that's an unfortunate little bit of timing. But, I mean, not that, you know, that was not the great tragedy that day that those DVDs didn't sell all that great on opening day, because I think people were understandably more prioritized on other things that were going on. I don't want to suggest that was in any way a big deal, but it was just kind of an odd footnote. It was just like, oh, okay.
Are there any particular titles? Because there's a few... on this, we've got a list of everything that they've ever come out with that have still never come out again on DVD.
Yeah,
anything in particular that you would love to do like a special edition Blu-ray of? That's one of the titles hasn't come back 20 years.
I'd like to see Near Dark done again properly with a new transfer. In terms of extras, I don't think there's really much that needs to be done for that, because that was a great package that was done back then. David Gregory really did a great documentary and got all the great people to participate in that. But I would love to see that one come back out and get a real HD transfer into restoration, because what we did back then was great, but you know that was 18 years ago. So that's one. I mean, a lot of the other titles that I worked on have, in one form or another, come back out. So I'd have to be reminded of which ones haven't.
There was one that I'd seen. Has Penn ever come back out on anything?
No, Penn. That's a good one. Yeah, Penn has not, and that's because the company that owned it at the time that we owned it, had licensed it from at the time, doesn't own it anymore, and and where it has gone has still been a source of confusion for some people. So I think there may be someone that's trying to work on that right now. I'd love to see. I was a big proponent of Penn when that came out. I really wanted to see that one come out. In fact, I think I wrote the liner notes for it. I'm not entirely sure.
I knew that was one that I was like, man, I've completely forgot about that movie.
Yeah, and it's a great little film, and it's one of those movies that was very much right up our alley, because it's like, how do you classify that one? It's like, well, it's not really a horror movie, but it's not a thriller either. It's got a very uneasy mix. It's one of those movies that you feel really uneasy while you're watching. It's got such an odd tone to it, and it's just the pin doll is really creepy, and everything about the way that movie was filmed, it's just very unsettling. And what's interesting about that is, do you know who the voice of Pin was?
Oh God, who?
Who's that?
Watch Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul? Jonathan Banks, who plays Mike Ehrmantraut.
Oh yeah,
yeah, he's the voice of Pin, which cracks me up. It's just like, of all the people they got. It's like, wow. So I would love to do it. If Pin ever comes back out, I would love to get an interview with him just to go, how the hell did that gig come up for you?
I tell you another one on here that's confusing to me too, though. That they may have released like better, editions, Blu-ray or something, but I don't know of them off the top of my head. Is like the Peter Jackson stuff. Like,
we did Bad Taste, and another film of his called Forgotten Silver, which was this mockumentary that he did. He owns all those early movies again, and it's up to him. At the time, he didn't fully, and so because he produced a lot of those early films in cooperation with the New Zealand Film Commission, whom we licensed Bad Taste from at the time. And the reason that he didn't participate in Bad Taste at that time was he was in the middle of filming the first Lord of the Rings trilogy. So there was no way he was going to have time. And then after a while, that movie eventually, I think he got the rights back to all of those. And it's up to him whether they ever come back out or not, because he controls them and he wants to restore them and do, all this stuff for himself. But my whole argument is, when is he going to have time to focus on doing that? The guy's like a mini industry, so it's just going to be a matter of when he finally gets the opportunity to kind of focus on it and feels it's a good time to bring him out. But I would kill to see Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead and even Heavenly Creatures and some of those come back out again, because I love Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles in particular, two of my all-time favorite movies. I just think that they're just brilliant and fun and just incredibly inventive, and I'd love to see real great restorations of those come back out.
Go ahead.
Another one, though, I wanted to mention on here because I was just curious about this myself. Blake Paris actually was asking about the Fright Pack sets. They would release. I don't know if it titles that were like not big sellers that they would kind of pack together, just try to.
Are you talking about those ones that look like a 6-pack of beer on the outside?
Yes. Yeah, there was one with some Italian stuff.
That was the idea of one of our marketing managers, Tom. He came up with that idea. We just put, a lot of those were ones that were sort of C titles, lower B titles that individually hadn't done much, and we just had some lying around, and it was just a way to try to repackage stuff. We were always trying to think outside the box, and so how can we remarket stuff we already have? Personally, I never much cared for those. I always thought it was a little bit kind of crass. It's like, horror is 6-pack of beer and just kind of like lower. I don't know. It just seemed a little bit kind of like, these aren't movies. It's just a thing that's on your shelf. I don't know. There was like a mixed message. I always felt. Maybe I'm overthinking it, to be honest with you.
At the time, Shriek Show they were doing the multi-packs, and
I always Shriek Show. I forgot all about them.
I always thought that Anchor Bay, that was kind of their version of that.
Yeah, I don't know if there was any connection there or not, because I never remember that being discussed at the office. But we did several of those, and I think some of them did pretty well.
Cemetery Man, that was another one that somebody brought up.
That one. Well, that one was a difficult one because we licensed that through Fox at the time, and they didn't have any elements. They didn't have a master, because the problem with that movie is that there's like 8 companies that have a piece of that. And so trying to find who had a master that was usable for it was very, very difficult. In the end, we found one that was okay. But then Fox's rights eventually ran out, so Anchor Bay's rights ran out. And where it is now is with a couple other people. And I was hearing that it was actually going to finally come back out, but then someone started talking about a remake, and then the rights got confused. So I don't know what's going on with that. So the U.S. rights on that are still kind of an up-in-the-air thing, unfortunately.
There's so many good ones on here. I mean, what about the drive-in double features, Sleepy?
Oh, yeah, those were great. Yeah, that was another attempt to try to get some of these couple titles that individually wouldn't have sold. We didn't think would sell very well on their own. And then some that had been out before, but we thought would make more sense to pair together, like, Hell, the Living Dead, and Rats. Yeah. And, there was some odd ones in there.
Paired together again on the Blu-ray, I think.
Yeah, and so it was funny. A lot of those did very well, and I liked that line very, very much, because it was like trying to find, okay, well, what two great tastes go great together, and trying to figure out, and it's like, and also it was nice if we could get one title that was stronger than the other, so you could get one that was like, okay, people are going to want to buy it for this, but then they might try this one out. So And some of those did very, very well. I remember some of them, like the Hell Knight. I think it was it Hell Knight and Fade to Black?
Yes.
I think that we did together. Those did very well. And Hell, Living Dead, Rats, and there was The Initiation was with one, and we had Mountain Top. There were a lot of the New World titles were sprinkled in there. So yeah, it's hard for us for me to remember exactly what they were, but I think we did like a dozen of those. Something to that effect. It was a lot.
I was looking up on eBay just some of the Anchor Bay titles that still go a good amount of money. Probably the one that still goes for crazy money, in my opinion, would be the Sleepaway Camp, the Recall,
funny story about that. I was in LA about a year and a half ago, and I went over to Amoeba Music, and sitting on the shelf was a mint condition Sleepaway Camp box set, the exclusive one with Best Buy that had the Red Cross on the cover. And they were only asking like $30 for it.
Jesus.
And I was like, holy shit, I bought it. I was like, fuck, I didn't even have one anymore. And so that I went ahead and got that. But yeah, that one was a big release because violated the fucking Geneva Convention by putting the Red Cross on the cover. We got spanked. Oh,
it was just innocent times back then.
Yeah, we got spanked for that. We got spanked a couple times with people who would come out of the blue and go, you don't have the rights to do that. No, you can't do that. I was like, oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
What happened with that? Did they just recall the slip covers and put a new slip cover on them? Or
no, they were actually, in retrospect, they were actually quite cool. We did our first run and sent that out. And then the government or whoever called us and said, hey, look, you can't do that. But they didn't make us recall anything or destroy anything. It's okay, just stop making it from now on and change it. What's out there is out there, fine. But just from this point on, from the end of this phone call, don't send any more out. And just redo it. So then we just redid it where it actually said like Survival Kit and Blood or whatever on the front. So they didn't make us destroy or recall anything. We may have had some unmade ones that we ended up not doing, but we didn't have to take anything off the store shelves. So that was nice, at least. But that made it instantly collectible. I remember, like, the day after, or no, it wasn't even the day after. It was like 2 or 3 hours, 4 or 5 hours after we made the announcement that set was, we were going to make these changes, and then that set wasn't going to be made anymore. We all individually in the office went onto eBay and said, they're scalping them already, son of a bitch. It's like within hours, people were like, the rare and out of print Sleepaway Camp. It's not rare. You can go to Best Buy right now and still get it.
Well, it was It still is. I mean, the thing is like, how long ago was that? That was 15, 16 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2003, I think. Yeah, I think that was, so 17 years ago, something like that.
And it's still worth some money.
I know, and it was a great set. The designer of that, Joe Value, she was really proud of that. And she put a lot of effort into that, and so it was a little heartbreaking for her to have to kind of change it because the Red Cross really was a great design. But it's just like, well, we're not going to fight the U.S. government over this. So at the end of the day, it's like, all right, sorry, real sorry.
The
could be
the package too, like just overall some of the product around that time period, like the Divimax Day of the Dead set. I love the packaging.
Well, I could tell. I was the marketing manager on that. I marketed managed a few titles. I didn't really want to go into marketing very much because it just wasn't really something that appealed to me all that much. Because there was just a lot of bullshit you had to put up with, and by that time in the company, we were getting ready to be sold to someone else, so they were really clamping down on budgets, and you had to really justify every decision you wanted to make. And Jay was leaving, and it was just like, But Day of the Dead was very much my baby, so I came up with the idea for the what we wanted for the packaging, and I worked with one of the designers, Rob Webb, on how to put this together and do this really cool sort of textured relief of Bub on the front. They had a die cut cover, and you can open it up and you'd see the doc underneath. I mean, it was just really, and then the booklet, which was an idea that because we had that booklet in there, which was done to make it look like the doctor's handbook. That came about because we had very little money to do a booklet, and so it's like, well, we need to do something that's cheap. So I'm like, okay, well, what if it's like a rough black and white hand, like on just like almost like generic paper that looks like the doctor's notes. And the only color we can afford to do is red. The rest of it has to be black and white. And so that was one where the budget drove the creative direction of it, and I think it's great. It was really one of my favorite little pieces of that release. But I remember driving to Chicago to the printing plant to see the first Day of the Dead's come off with that textured bub on the front, that sort of, and it was just like, oh, this is so cool. This is going to be such a cool release. And then, unfortunately, they something happened in the directions for assembly, and because you get that, you have the DVD case with the 2 DVDs in it, and then the booklet was supposed to be inside, and then you shut it and close it up, and then on the back is the cover with all the contents of the UPC code. Well, someone got the idea that and I don't know how this happened or who thought this was what we were supposed to do, but they thought, okay, well, what do we do with the booklet? Well, let's spot glue it to the back of the DVD package and then shrink wrap it. So we finally get our final samples, our first printed package samples of Day of the Dead. They're starting to go out the door to the retailers, and we get our first box in, and usually that's a glorious day where it's like, look, it's all finished in here. And I pull it out, and the goddamn booklet is on the back of every single one, covering up all the contents of the UPC code on the back of the thing. And I'm like, why is it? Oh my God, they're all on the back. So I called the manufacturer. I said, my God, why is this? What's going on? Now, I haven't opened up any of them yet. I just see that it's been shrunk wrapped to the back of the package. I'm like, why is this on the back like this? The stores aren't going to be able to scan in the UPC code. No one's going to know what's in the set. And I said, well, it's the directions we have right here. Booklet to be spot glued to the back. I'm like, glued? It's glued? And I tear open the sprinkler, and I think from their perspective, they just heard a barrage of screaming and profanity from me for like about a minute and a half. I was like, why the fuck is this fucking thing glued? How the fuck does this happen? Who the fuck is it? So it's like, I was so mad, but fortunately, we managed to stop any of it from actually going out, and they had to pull it all back in and repackage all of it. And it was like, that did not come from this office. No one here would have said spot glue the fucking booklet on the back of the goddamn thing.
I think I remember you telling us that story at a convention one time.
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Yeah, that was a frantic day. So I was like, it's glued! What? Oh my God.
One other thing, too, I guess, is you kind of got your start with what you're doing now at Anchor Bay.
I did, yeah. That did start there.
The Demons, I think, was the first one.
Yeah, it was. It was the first, because we had a great team of people out there doing that already. First with David Gregory and his team, and then later on, after he and Bill Lustig left, Perry Martin and his team took over there and did great stuff. So they had teams in place to do that already, but it had been really my goal to be a filmmaker to begin with, and I saw that as an opportunity to say, I would really like to get into doing that. And through circumstances that just sort of happened, they got Night of the Demons, and I thought, well, are you going to get an interview with Linnea Quigley? And they were like, well, she doesn't really live where our people are, and we're not sure about it. And it turns out she was going to be at a convention in Cleveland, which I was going to be going to anyway. And it's like, oh, okay. So I contacted her. She agreed to do it, and then I went down there, and my camera gear was stolen. And a friend of mine named Mike. Yeah, no, I went down there. I had brought a brand new camera and tripod and a couple lights and stuff, and the camera was stolen. And she was actually, it was weird. There were 2 conventions that weekend. I was at the one convention, and shit disappeared on me. And I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? And fortunately, a pair of good friends, Mike Watt and Amy Lynn Best, said, well, we have a camera. We can help you out. And so we went over to the other convention where Linnea was, and we filmed her interview. Thank God. I owe them everything for that. And filmed her interview. She was a delight, and went back home, edited it on my own. It was the first time I'd gotten to know Adobe Premiere a little bit by that point on my own with some other stuff. So I put it all together, presented it to Anchor Bay, and they were like, this is great, Michael. This is really, really great. We'll definitely use it on the release, but we can't promise that we'll be able to use you for this going forward because we already have people. And I was like, and I understood that. But it was my attempt to show them, hey, I can actually do something like this instead of what I've been doing. But again, they didn't really need me for that. So, but that gave me the impetus to say, okay, well, if I can do this, I was able to do this, maybe I can do more. And then when I left the company, I think it was almost like less than a year later after I did that for Night of the Demons, probably not even that long, maybe 8 or 9 months, I thought, well, I've got contacts, people know who I am, and I want to do this. So that's when Red Shirt Pictures was officially born. I used the Red Shirt Pictures name on that Night of the Demons piece, but the company was officially incorporated in April of 2005, right after I left Anchor Bay. So getting to do that little piece was very important for me because it's like, no, I guess I can do this. You know, it's worth a shot.
So what would you say would be like, I don't know how to say it, but like the one thing that you would point to at Anchor Bay that you would say, okay, this is the project that I was proudest to be involved with, and which one would you say, okay, this is the one that kind of like I was the most disappointed in?
Wow. I can't pick just one because there were so many different things at periods of time, but there's three that come to mind for me with Anchor Bay. Near Dark, because I loved that movie. I even named my high school production company Near Dark Productions. I loved that movie to death. I was a big proponent of it, and I was very involved with the creative direction that title took, from the packaging and everything. I mean, I didn't design it, but I was very active in wanting to see how we could make this thing really special. And I just loved that movie, and I wanted to do everything we could for it. And I think we did such a bang-up job on that. And I feel that more people got to see that movie through our DVD than any other release or method before. That really, I felt like we really properly introduced that movie to the movie-going public. Was through that DVD, and it sold amazingly well. The other one would be the Book of the Dead, the Evil Dead Book of the Dead.
Yeah.
That was such an amazing, gloriously rocky process because no one knew how the hell to do this. There wasn't like an existing template for how to do something like that. But getting to meet and work with Tom Sullivan, and then having to deal with a New York sales agent who was putting this together with a company in China, and then having regular communications with them about how to put this thing together, and getting a book samples back that would be wrong in like 10 different ways, but right in one. And it'll say, okay, well, that's right, but we got to change. I mean, it was an amazing process. And when that thing finally came out, it was like we just felt like we had conquered fucking Mount Everest with that thing. Because it was like no one had ever done anything else like that. And in many ways, I always felt like we were chasing the Book of the Dead for a long time after that, trying to come up with, the pressure was on. It's like, well, how do we create the next Book of the Dead? My argument was like, well, we really can't. That was just such a perfect thing where it was a prop and a package all at the same time. That's a very rare, that was just lightning striking. Instead of trying to top that, we should just do what's cool for other, it's like, well, we need to do the Book of the Dead for Dawn of the Dead. It's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And it's funny because that approach ended up leaving us, because with the Dawn of the Dead Ultimate Edition, we had a whole different design aesthetic in place. We were going to do this like fuzzy, like velvet cover for it. That was going to be, I feel like, really prestigious and cool. And we were trying desperately to make this work, but the costs were not coming in. And we kept staying on that road until the very end when it finally became apparent, okay, the costs are just out of whack. There's no way this is going to work. And it left us with only a few days to come up with a design for a more conventional slipcase packaging for that thing. And ultimately, I think that's what made it so great. It was because we didn't have time to second guess ourselves. Mike went in and came up with this very cool red and black design. It was very spare in many ways. And it felt very elegant, and it felt important and classy. And we didn't have time to overthink it. And as a result, so that was the result. And I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 days from the time that we came up with the design to the time we sent it off to the printer. All of that came together because we were like...
I remember when we were at the Horror Fine Convention in Baltimore that summer before it came out, there were copies of it. I think the Anchor Bay was sponsoring the show, and they were giving copies away. Was there, so we saw it like a month or two before it came out. I was like, oh shit,
Yeah, and when you pick, what I loved about the Dawn of the Dead thing was, in many ways, it was a conventional package with like a trifold thing, and it slipped in there and blah blah blah. But when you picked that thing up, it felt expensive. I mean, it just felt like, God damn, this feels like a brick. This was like, what is in this fucking thing? And, that I got to do a lot, and I got to venture out a little bit in that. And when we started developing that, like that was almost a 2-year process from the time of renegotiating the rights to getting that out. the thing I wanted to do more than anything was get a commentary together with the 4 cast members. I said, we've got to do this. We said, we've got to get we got to get those 4 people in a fucking room together. And people were like, oh, okay, we'll see. I was like, no, man, this is going to be my part. We're going to do this. And I managed to contact all of them, get them all together in New York City. And I was there, and we were in the boardroom, the executive boardroom of the Leona the Helmsley Hotel in New York City. And we recorded this commentary. It was me, my recordist, Armin Petrie, and Ken Forey, David Emge, Galen Ross, and Scott Reiniger. It was the first time all 4 of them had been together since the movie had come out. And they're having a great old time, and I'm just sitting there with the biggest, goofiest fucking smile on my face. Because it's like, this is, not only are they all here, it's going really well. And I was just like, they're here. The cast of Dawn of the Dead is here in this room with me. How fucking cool is this? So that, Dawn of the Dead is another one that really, I guess there's 4. Near Dark, Evil Dead Book of the Dead, the Dawn of the Dead Ultimate Edition, and then finally the Herzog-Kinski collection, which was something that was brainstormed between me and Mike Ortiz based off a flyer he did that was advertising a couple of the Herzog releases, which was really cool and had this really interesting use of color. And I was like, if we were to do, because there had been talk about doing a box set of just the Herzog-Kinski collaborations, and I'm like, well, what if we did a box set that looked like this flyer? And so between he and I, we came up with this overall approach, and we dummied up this box set that, he designed it, and we patched it together using a couple different ideas. And I had this Acer computer, which came with this really great, slipcase, this really elegant slipcase that had all the manuals in it. And I brought that in and said, what if we did it in a box like this? And he's like, oh, okay. And so we dummied up this thing with spit and cardboard and glue and everything. And we walked into Jay Douglas's office to pitch this thing. We had this whole spiel and everything. I was like, this is what we want to do and how we want to do it, why we think it's cool and blah, blah, blah. We walk in there and said, Jay, we want to talk to you about this idea we had. We handed him the box. And before we even said anything, he picked up the box, he looked at it, opened it up. Yeah, it's cool. Go do it. And that was it. And we were both like, well, we had this whole speech. Do you want to hear it? No, it's cool, guys. Go do it. I was like, all right. And eventually it came out, and we were going to do 5,000 pieces of this thing. And we ended up selling, I know at one point, we ended up selling 25,000 units of it. I mean, it was just, so that's one of the ones I'm most proud of, because that one just came up, that was me and Mike going, what if we did this? And then suddenly it became a thing, and that was, that's one I have a great, so I would say those 4 are the ones that I'm just like, are kind of touchstones for me. In terms of the ones that didn't work, it's usually because of the cover. We had, for as many great covers as we had, unfortunately a committee sort of sense of thinking came into play during a couple years there, and we shed out some pretty shitty covers for some of these releases. Cut and Run was one that I remember being like, what the fuck is this?
That is pretty shitty cover.
Yeah, it's like this blue cover with this out of focus image of Richard Lynch, and it looks like a bad Miami Vice ripoff. And I'm like, what is this? Where's Michael Berryman with the fucking machete? It's like, we're not using illustrated covers anymore. I'm like, what? So yeah, illustrated covers, they're saying that they don't sell. I'm like, who the fuck said what? So that led to a lot of, like, The Race with the Devil was another. And I don't want to, and I'm not blaming the designers for this, because none of them were happy with these covers.
I thought of that when you said bad artwork.
Oh yeah, that was horrendous. I mean, it's just like, and the designers that were responsible for these covers, I don't blame them, because they didn't want to do those covers either. And they just got micromanaged to death and ended up being just these really horrible things and so there was Evil Speak was another one that was really terrible, and it was just like, who are these for? I don't understand, who the hell are these, who are you hoping to attract with these? I mean, it was just, the worst cover though actually happened after I left. And if I in my mind, they waited to do this after I left, because if they had tried to do it while I was there, I would have burned the fucking building to the ground. But I mean, that's not what actually happened. But they did a repackaging of George Romero's Knight Riders that was the most misleading piece of garbage I have ever seen put on a DVD cover. For those of you out there, go look it up. You can find it. It was, I think this was done like 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. The cover is all black with some guy on a motorcycle who's not in the fucking movie in the front with this like crazed expression on his face. And it's all black and dark and night and gritty. And it's like the tagline is something like, ride to live, live to die. And and the title treatment is blood red, and on the K and the S at the end of Knight Riders, it has what looks like fangs on it. So if you looked at the thing, if you looked at the cover, you think this is a vampire biker flick. And I remember seeing that cover at the office. I dropped by to visit Mike or something one day, and I saw this routing going through, and I'm like, what in the fuck is this? And he's like, don't do it, dude. Please don't get involved. Please don't say anything. Like, all right, I'm not going to because I don't work here anymore, but this is a goddamn abomination. And I remember George got wind of it, and he had to sign. I think he signed one at a convention. I remember he went, Mike, did I make this movie? What movie is this? I don't remember making this movie. And I'm like, you didn't make that movie, George. I don't know what the fuck that is. It was just, so that was, oh my God. So yeah, for anyone out there, go find that cover and you'll see what I'm talking about. It is the most misrepresentative piece of shit that I have ever seen put out there. It was terrible.
I mean, and Knight Riders is a movie that's actually would be kind of hard to market anyway.
Yeah, and I understand what they were trying to do. You know, they were trying to, hip it up in a way or make it a little bit more palatable to a George, because it's George A. Romero's Knight Riders. It's like, well, I guess they're trying to pitch it to the audience that would normally buy a George Romero film, but they're going to buy this thing thinking, vampire bikers, this is going to be awesome. And then they watch the movie, it's like, what the fuck is this? This is not, but God damn. So yeah, that's the worst cover I think I've ever seen on a DVD. And technically it was an Anchor Bay title, but I wasn't there at the time. But some of the ones we did while I was there, I wasn't very happy with. But, it just comes with the territory.
We won't keep you on here all night, but
I don't mind talking about Anchor Bay. It was a good time.
Well, a lot of great memories and stuff like that. And I did read, I don't know if this is true. We can do a little bit of Wikipedia fact or fiction.
Well, if it's on Wikipedia, it must be true.
Right.
Does Lionsgate actually own the Anchor Bay name now, or what's the deal?
Yeah, they do, because they the way this worked was, it was Anchor Bay owned by the Handelman Company. Handelman Company sold off Anchor Bay Entertainment to a telecommunications company called IDT, who owned it the last year or so that I was there. And then shortly after I left, they sold Anchor Bay Entertainment to Starz, because Starz didn't have a home video label. They had the original product and series, and they had the cable channels, but they didn't have a home video out. So that was kind of the reasons they picked up Anchor Bay as a way to have their own product go through there. And Starz owned Anchor Bay going forward, and then Lionsgate bought Starz. When that happened, the need for Anchor Bay was not there anymore, because Anchor Bay was a home video distributor, and Lionsgate has their own home video label. So they didn't really need Anchor Bay. So they repurposed what existing product was under Anchor Bay's name and put it out through Lionsgate, and then the Anchor Bay name just went away. But no, it's technically still over there.
So, Lionsgate, they're using the Vestron name right now. Is that correct? Yeah. So there's a possibility down the line they may see, hey, maybe we can release some of these titles under the Anchor Bay name. It's possible, I guess.
I guess it's possible. For me, I would just like to see. I wouldn't want it to be treated as just a branding thing. I would like to see if someone could just get the name, buy the name Anchor Bay, and then actually start a whole new thing with it, and kind of go back to basics with it, and kind of start over with it. That would be kind of cool. But as to whether or not they would actually do that or not, I don't know.
If it were today, a company that would get some of these cult movies and release them in like 4K or something like that, that'd be the closest.
Yeah, and I think they would do kind of what Jay wanted to do back then, was do really kind of high price, limited edition, like specialty packaging, just things that they would do a limited run of 5,000 pieces or whatever, and then that would be it. and just
Right.
like really go hardcore for the collector market again. Because that's when we were at our best, was when we really saw, these are our people who are buying this. Let's pitch directly to them. Let's not pretend we're trying to sell this. I mean, it was great when we could sell to a wider audience, absolutely. And some of those titles played big across mainstream audiences. But, you know, when we did the Anchor Bay, you know, some of those real special limited edition tins and stuff, it was like, you know, we didn't do a special, you know, license plate tin of Repo Man for the masses. This was made for, it's like, we know there's a group of people out there who are going to see this and go, that's cool, I want to own that. And then most people are going to go by there and go, what the fuck is that? Well, we're not worried about those people. We want the people that are going to buy this thing without even thinking twice about it.
I'm telling you, though, that group and that kind of marketing strategy still exists today, and would probably
very much so.
Because you look at like Vinegar Syndrome and Scorpion releasing, what they're doing, they release, you know, maybe like, I don't know if it's like between 300 and 500 of the limited edition with like the slip covers.
Oh yeah.
And they sell out almost immediately, and then they're on eBay for like, you know, $200.
Oh yeah, no, the marketing DNA of Anchor Bay's legacy is present, like I said, in so many of the companies that you see out there now. Because I mean, it worked. It was a very viable strategy, and it helped create a brand. Anchor Bay became a brand. It wasn't just a distributor. It became that boat, that little fucking boat, became a thing that people really cherished, and they wanted to own as many things that had that boat on it as possible. And that's when we knew we really had succeeded, when it was like, you know, I would get all the emails in from people, and that was one of my jobs, was to answer emails from the public. And I can't tell you how many people across the world would say, hey, I went and bought this thing because I never heard of it before, but I saw your company's logo on it, and I figured, well, I'll give it a shot. And Jay loved hearing shit like that. It's like, then that means we're doing this right.
I think people still do that.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot to this day. But Anchor Bay really developed that, I don't want to say first, but certainly was the first sort of genre company like that to really capitalize on that across the board with a number of different titles, and use titles like Halloween, Army of Darkness, and Dawn of the Dead to really, you know, show people, like, well, if you like this, try Martin. Well, if you like this, try that. You know, so we were very good at trying to just expose people to a bunch of cool shit, which was kind of, like I said, what Jay's mantra was.